is the friendships and the relationships. You being one of them, because you and I didn't play together. I mean, you're younger than me,
Right.
but I'm lucky. I'm lucky that I guess. Yeah, I guess it could be good and bad. I mean, I'm still hanging around, but it's afforded me the opportunity to get to know this younger generation. So I date back to, I was Gino's third year. That was my freshman year, and then to still be affiliated and to still, have relationships with not only people before me, my generation, those shortly after, which you were one of those than the kids today. It's pretty special and probably the coolest part of this whole thing for me.
Yeah, and Meg, you have been part of the women's basketball program for, over 3 decades now. And you've seen assistant coaches come and go. You've seen players come and go. You've seen seasons come and go. Especially players like Maria as well.
Yeah.
What is it like being the voice of the Huskies? Because that's a pretty big responsibility, especially in Connecticut when our women's team is so revered and everyone, all eyes are on you and you have to bring it every time.
Well, that's an interesting question. And I think, also based on what we just alluded to with the relationships, and I think Maria will really understand what I'm saying. Like, yeah, I take my job seriously and I work hard at it and I try to be prepared in all the broadcasts that I've been doing, God, since 1997. But as Maria knows, it is a family. So that's always the way I look at it. I always just look at it like be prepared, do my job. But the people that I'm with, the people that I'm talking about, and I get to travel with them, and that's how I look at it. And it is a family. And that's always how I've seen it. So I don't look at it as, it's the big UConn basketball powerhouse.
Right.
I almost go back to my first impression, which honestly was the field house and, Chris Daly having to give her jogging class students extra credit to come to our games. That will always be, in my mind. Obviously, it's different today, bigger, the championships, the big Worth practice facility. I mean, they travel differently and they're a much bigger program now, but those humble beginnings will never be far from my mind because that's how I met this program.
Maria, what would you say your earliest memories of Meg were when you came to UConn?
I think I met Meg on my recruiting trip. I think we had to go to Coach's house or something.
Oh, okay.
So Meg and I have a very interesting intertwined situation because I knew her husband way before I knew her.
Yep.
And I knew her husband before she knew her husband. So
that's true.
So Meg always has a special place in my heart, not only because she's just a phenomenal human being, but she married a Valley boy. So we got that connection. I think the cool part about what Meg just said, and it's so true because over the last 2 seasons, I've watched a bunch of different other conferences. And when you go on and you watch some programs, games that are televised, there's different people doing them all the time.
Yeah.
And they're purely just analytical. Like when you hear Meg do the games, it's fun to listen. A lot of times I turn other stations off or I mute them. What I love is she gives such a family perspective when she's talking about the kids and about coach and about CD, that it makes the games, it makes you feel like you know them way more than you do. And I think that's just such a special touch that she's always had.
Well, thank you, Maria. That's very nice. Thank you. Well, but you're also part of the family, so you probably have a different, your senses are heightened in listening to it maybe differently, but I appreciate what you said, but you're also a big part of that family.
Yeah, I mean, I'm biased, obviously, right? But
Yeah.
I just think the way you go about talking about the kids, it's not so black and white, and you can tell that pretty easy because I watch a lot of basketball. And yours is very colorful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Meg, being a player as well, how would you say that has influenced you as covering the team and, broadcasting games? Because, it obviously gives you a little more insight, a little more knowledge to what's going on. But how would you say being a player has influenced you as a broadcaster?
That's a good question.
Well, that's because I'm the best podcast host in the universe.
Well, that's what I had heard. So I'm glad that it's holding true. Well, you know what? Having been a player, and then I also think coaching for a couple years was helpful. And it's so funny because when I think back to being on the UConn coaching staff, and this is back when we used VHS tapes.
Oh.
And I used to bring the VHS tape to the truck, to the whatever network was broadcasting the game, and they would record the broadcast of the game, and then I would pick it up from them at the end of the game, and that's how we would get the game film. So, times have changed just a little bit in that regard. But I think both, I guess my past experience as a player and as a coach, and maybe just the way I think, the way I've been motivated and what has driven me all of these years is that as I'm doing a game, I think I'm only kind of speaking to, in my head, I'm speaking to both coaching staffs of both teams, even though I always do UConn and it's, a UConn broadcast, I still want to respect the game enough and the people in it enough to not just be completely biased. And that would even go back to their 40-point games, their 40-point win,
right.
So I always think about the coaching staffs of both teams and the parents of all of the players of both teams. And that's kind of who I talk to. And I just try to be fair and honest because I'm a parent. Like sometimes the stuff I have to say to my kids or witness that my kids do, like it's not always pretty what they do, and you have to be honest with them. But you have to be fair. And sometimes, even Paige Beckers may make a mistake. You can point that out because I have to be honest.
Yeah, no, you do.
At the same time, if a kid gets in on the end of a bench in a team that UConn is playing and they're losing to UConn by 30 points, and, Gino has taken out his starters and now the other team takes out their starters and puts in their bench. If we don't talk about that kid that comes in, even if she misses the shot, you have to say her name because her parents and maybe her grandparents are watching the game. So that's a big thing for me. Like, I just want to respect the game, respect the kids playing it, but their parents are watching and the coaching staffs of both teams are watching it and will watch the film back with a critical eye. And those are the people that are important to me in the way I call the game.
And I know that you grew up in West Hartford.
No, she's in West Hartford.
You live in West Hartford, correct?
Yeah, I'm a transplant. Yep, I grew up outside Philadelphia.
Right, right. Okay, so that's what it said. Bucks County, right?
That's right.
Right. Bucks County. How does someone from Bucks County, Pennsylvania, wind up at the University of Connecticut? Was that something that you were interested in from the start, or?
Yeah, well, particularly in 1988. I mean, that's the real question.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? And it's funny because Maria and I collaborate in a couple of different areas in life with basketball, and it was a basketball camp. Actually, it was Kathy Rush basketball camp that I was a camper at in high school. And Kathy Rush, who was in the Naismith Hall of Fame now, but she coached the Immaculata women's team back in the day, which they made a movie about them. But she started this camp empire back then. And I believe it was the first girls all-star camp in the country. And coaches came, and Gino came to the camp because he was from Norristown, which was like, 20 minutes up the road. And this basketball camp was at Delaware Valley College, which I think it's now a university. but I was at that camp and he saw me play, and that's kind of how it happened. So, but when I got the first time Chris Daly called me, I think I was a sophomore or junior. We talked for an hour, and we were born in the same hospital. She's from New Brunswick, New Jersey. My mom is from there. We knew a lot of the same people. She knew my aunts and uncles, so we had a connection. And then the first time I talked to Gino, it was an hour-long conversation, and we just kind of clicked. And maybe that's why I'm still around. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's amazing that that's how it happened. And Maria, you both, you're running camps right now. You're taking time out of your day to do this interview because you're both running camps. And you've built up very popular camps where, girls are growing as far as their interest in sports, especially in basketball. And the numbers are improving and getting bigger and bigger. And Maria, we've talked about it, especially this past season. Women's sports is coming to the forefront and really stepping up and making a name for themselves, even more so than the men. What do you think the difference has been, Maria? I'll start with you for the interest in women's sports going up. Obviously, besides Cece and Angel Reese and some of the rookies that they had this year, but it seems like it's been building over the last few years. But this year kind of was the pinnacle of it.
Yeah, I think one thing that I'll point out is I think that social media and media in general is bad in a lot of ways, but I think that young kids having access to watch basketball is just so much greater. I mean, when I was in college, Meg was doing our CPTV, right? So really, the only people that could watch games were people in Connecticut, or you had to pay some ridiculous fee if you're out of state. But now, you got so many more programs that are getting televised games, and these kids are watching them, and they're like, "Oh, hey, this is like, I want to do this." I think this is. So I don't know what your thoughts are, Meg, but I think that, and I think just the quality of the play is so much better every single year that it's fun.
Yeah, I agree with all of that, Maria. And I think, nothing happens in a vacuum. And usually if something starts to explode now, there's typically, now this is a very general statement, but there's typically been many things and years of these things just sort of building. And I think we're kind of hitting our stride. And I think it's the byproduct of years. Could you say the UConn women's basketball program has had anything to do with it? Well, how can you not say that based on the fact that their games have been televised for as long as they have been? The ratings have been going back to what you said, the CPTV days. That was the highest rated product on public television at the time.
Yep.
And even the goofy Gino Auriemma show that I did with Gino. That was really successful because people were interested in what he had to say and the way they played. And so that's been building. The social media stuff. The game is bigger all around the country. And I think people are ready for it. I think it's time. Yeah. And whether it's the social media, as you talked about, the different streaming services, there's so many more ways to watch it and so many more people watching it. And there's so many dads that have kids, that have little girls who, and, certainly moms too. But when I can remember when the WNBA was first starting, to see dads bringing their daughters to WNBA games, that's a big deal. That was a big deal for the growth of the game.
That was really special.
And then I remember seeing a little boy at Madison Square Garden in probably 98, wearing a Rebecca Lobo jersey. And I thought, wow, I thought we arrived then, and now look where we are.
Yep.
So I think it's a combination of a lot of things, and it's been coming for a long time. And now I think we're really hitting our stride. And I'm just so glad that there are so many, like you talked about, Steve, the younger players that are now rookies in the WNBA, whether it's Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, all those guys. it's pretty remarkable to see where it's come, and I don't think we've hit the ceiling yet.
I agree with you. I should not have said pinnacle. Pinnacle is the wrong word. We're still on the rise. We're still on the rise. What I found interesting was that you graduated and then you coached for 2 years, but you knew that your aspirations were not to be a head coach. You knew that you wanted to move on to do something else. And did you have a plan in your head at the time of what you wanted to do? Because I know that you majored in mass communications and media studies, but you weren't necessarily planning on a broadcasting career.
Yeah, I had no idea what I was going to do.
You kind of just fell into it. It sounds like from
I just sort of some of it's luck. Some of it, you work hard and hope that you get lucky. Some of it's timing. But if I could tell you some of the odd jobs that I had back in the day just to pay the rent, to have food, it would blow your mind. But, I think those things are important. Like, you have to grind it out. Like, if your first house is your best house, I don't think that's just not how life is to me. Like, I had an apartment, and then I had another crappy apartment, and like, you got to build. And I appreciate my journey. I had no idea what I wanted to do, but I know I just wanted to be around good people, and I wanted to have passion about whatever it is I was doing. And I certainly wouldn't have thought that I would be, at this point, broadcasting the games for close to 30 years. And, but it's funny though, I wanted to have children. And for me, I just thought I can't, like, I knew I couldn't do the TV with the travel to the extent that I would want to do. I wanted to have children. So and I actually got great advice. Maria, I'm sure I've told you the story. It was the first couple of years of the WNBA, and Adam Silver was the president of NBA Entertainment at the time. And he and I had become good friends. And I said to him, like, Adam, what am I doing? This business is crazy. He goes, Meg, have another job and do the TV on the side, because it's a really crazy business. And now he's the commissioner of the NBA. So that was some of the best advice I'd ever gotten. And so I've always had another job, and I've done the TV on the side, and it's worked well because I traveled a little bit with the team. And I've been fortunate, too, to just broadcast, to be able to broadcast my program still with the head coach that I played for, to still have that luxury, 25 years later. That's insane.
Oh, it's amazing.
It really is. And so that's why, then I got into this camp world, and, I'm not as involved with the AAU stuff, but I respect what Maria's doing. I'm involved a little bit with that, but we're trying to collaborate on this camp stuff because, we think the same and we want the same for the girls. We want to continue to build our game and get more girls involved and getting involved in it the right way. And so I appreciate what Maria's doing a lot.
Yeah, and Maria, I mean, you have always been known as a grinder and a hard worker, and, someone who's always going to dive on the floor for a loose ball. You have paid your dues throughout your entire career, basketball and in life. What has motivated you to continue to grow and succeed? I mean, you've built yourself a family. You have an incredible AAU program. You're coaching a high school team, but your ambition is always there, and it never goes away. And like you said, you never settle. You're always looking to want something more. But that's what I feel with you. You have tremendous ambition, and that is what led you to the success that you've had in many different areas. You're not just successful in one area. You're successful in many areas.
Steve, ask her how many jobs she has.
She has 40. She has 47. She has 47 jobs. I know.
Absolutely.
Believe me.
I think part of it for me is like I never feel like my dues are paid. I take the approach like I just want to keep paying my dues, and like eventually someday I'm probably the type of person, I might never retire. I'll probably always do something. But you know what kind of changed over the years, and I'm sure Meg can resonate with this in terms of like motivation and ambition. Is like when I was younger, like I wasn't the tallest or the fastest. So for me, it was like, let me prove everybody wrong, right?
Correct.
And then, you get to college and like my motivation was my teammates and my coach, right? That's who I wanted to play for. Then I graduated and I went out into the real world. And then I had my daughter, and then everything changes, right? Because all you do, like my whole life is now about my family and my kids. Like, how do I provide? And not only that, but more importantly, set the example for them. Like, I never want them to look at me and say, like, oh, like, what are you doing? How come you're sitting at home today? Like, I want to show them what hard work is. Even if I don't need to work as hard as I am, they don't need to know that. Right. So
Right.
I think as you get older, your motivation and your ambitions change based off of your circumstance. But I think that for me, it's just always wanting to, like Meg said, it's all about doing it for the right reasons and with the right people.
Exactly.
If somebody said, you could do X, Y, Z, and I'll give you $1 million, but it's going to be with 2 criminals and a felon, I'm like, good. I don't need $1 million, right? So I think it's really just getting to a place of being satisfied with like the love, not necessarily the outcome or the money.
Right. Meg, talk to me a little bit about the camp that you're doing now. Is it something that you do throughout the summer? Do you run camps? Is it something you do once or twice a summer? How does your camp system work?
Well, I have 2 different camps. One of them is my personal camp,
Right.
which I just do in West Hartford, and we do a couple weeks of summer, and it's great. It's a really fun basketball camp for girls because there aren't a lot of them. And I have 2 daughters and a son, and when my one daughter got into 8th grade, the rec program in our town for girls basketball stopped in 8th grade. Now the boys program continues, but the girls didn't. And it's funny, Maria, you talk about motivation. I thought to myself, high school girls, if they don't want to play for their high school team, they should be able to play for their rec league in their town. Like, that was one of my motivations. Like, I want to get more kids playing at a younger age that
Exactly.
they can continue to play if they want to.
Isn't it crazy that they don't allow that to happen? Like, in other words, if your town doesn't have a team, you should be able to play wherever you want.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it is so crazy. It really is. And so that was a huge motivation for me, not to mention we were coming out of the pandemic. So I want to get kids out of, off of their couch, away from the screens, get them interacting, getting them moving. And along those lines, one of the jobs I had in my life, I was a lobbyist. So all my friends from the Capitol were talking to me about all of these ARPA funds that were out for this American Rescue Plan Act. And so I ended up, and I had this, seeing how successful my camp was pretty early, and how, or at least the need for, and the joy on their faces just because they were out and about and interacting with one another, I thought, I want to do this statewide.
Right.
And so that's where I had talked, I ended up meeting this woman who ran a nonprofit that is statewide. And we ended up partnering, and we went to the legislature, and we got some of those funds to do a statewide girls basketball, sports, and wellness program. And I looped Maria into that very early. I mean, Maria, remember some of those conversations we had in the beginning? Like, we didn't even have our money. Like, we didn't even have the money yet to do anything. But I knew Maria was someone that I wanted to have involved. And it goes back to what we both said a few moments ago, like, whatever you do, you just want to do it with the right people. And Maria is one of those people to me. And so we started talking. And so now, and it's taken a little bit of time, but there's no rush to what we're doing. We want to make sure we do it the right way. And so we go into various communities, and right now we're in East Hartford at Connecticut River Academy. We're doing a camp here. It's our 3rd year. And we do it through the Park and Rec Department, and it's an unreal camp. And we took them to one of the schools today. How about, Maria? I don't know if I told you this. We're taking them up to UConn tomorrow. They're going to play kickball on the baseball field.
Oh, that's awesome.
They're so pumped. They're so pumped.
Yeah.
So and it's nice that Penders is letting us use the field. It's a brand new field, Elliott Ballpark. So, and we're going to go to the dairy bar and get some ice cream.
Got to go there.
Yeah, I mean, but some of these kids, like, even though they live in these Hartfords, they may not be up on, like, Maria, how many people do you know that haven't been on the campus since we graduated? Or some people have never been to the UConn campus.
I know. It's sad. You're 100% right.
Yeah.
You're 100% right.
Yes. And then, but the big thing is, like, Maria is doing a camp right now that we're involved with together. She's doing it down at her school. And it's just providing different opportunities to different kids. And the more opportunities we can provide to different girls, I think the better off we're all going to be,
Yeah.
Maria, how long have you guys been collaborating?
This week, Steve, just so you know. So Meg's organization partnered with us and basically subsidized, basically tuition for kids.
Okay. Wow.
And some other expenses so that we can run an affordable, pretty much free. We charge $25 just, so that it didn't seem like it was I think if it's free, Meg, like people are like, is this legit? I even got that.
You know what? Absolutely right.
Yeah. Yep. So, but the cool part is like, I left there today and I had so many parents stop me and say how thankful they were because they have multiple kids, and where they're struggling is like, all right, a kid gets to pick a camp, one camp for the whole summer because camps are expensive. And if you send every kid that you have to every camp, you need a seventh job, right?
Yeah,
so,
especially for recruiting. Yeah.
Yeah, like it's we've made it really, really fun. We play a ton of different games and contests, and we're providing breakfast in the morning, and it's just really been an unbelievable experience. And so, I'm thankful that Meg and Sherry, the person who runs the nonprofit, have partnered with us on this. And I think it could be huge. I mean, we have close to 100 kids this week.
That's amazing.
It's amazing, really.
Yeah, we could very easily have had 200, although I would probably be ripping my hair out of my head right now. But
yeah.
You know what's it's just remarkable that both of you have had tremendous success in so many different areas, but you always pay it forward and you're always giving back. And I think that's so important because people inherently sometimes are selfish and they just worry about me. You guys have taken it upon yourselves to collaborate together. You're doing camps together. You do camps individually. Maria coaching, Maria doing AAU, you doing the broadcasting, but giving back to the community is so important, and it's a lost art and it's forgotten about. So I truly commend both of you because you're giving your time, this is your summer where, you could be relaxing and enjoying some time, but you're on the court, you're working with these kids. You have a organization where they're not paying $100 a week, $100 a day to go to camp, and they're getting great coaching. They're learning something from it. They're having a wonderful experience. So the fact that you're giving back, I think, is really remarkable.
Steve, that's very nice of you. And I know Maria's parents very well. We were both pretty lucky to be raised by great parents, great families. That's where it all started, and then that family continued at UConn. And I know I can speak. I speak for myself. I know I can speak for Maria a little bit, just to be grateful. And why wouldn't you pay it forward? Why wouldn't you give back?
Right.
Because it's much better to do that than to be selfish.
And everyone that I've talked to has said it, that there's just something different about UConn, whether it's in the water or the dairy barn, that we are a family and we come together and we support each other in whatever we're doing. And it's great to see that this is happening and everything that you guys are doing. So I commend the both of you. I hope your camps are going well. I hope you don't pull your hair out. And I anticipate you getting 200 kids next year. You'll get your 200 next year.
Yeah, I think you will, Maria. Maria, I think it may not be the water, but it could be whatever's that test.
But yeah, I know.
The beer line.
I know. Whatever. It definitely could. It definitely could be with it. Ted's is a very magical place. But I know you guys are busy. I know you guys have to run. I wanted to thank you both for taking the time, because I know that you have these camps and you have kids running around. I really appreciate you taking the time to come on our podcast, Conversations with Cully and Conlin. It's part of our Husky Talk podcast network. Maria has done a fantastic job as a co-host, and we have grown our listenership because of her and her name, and she's legendary, and her 3 national title wins will always be there. And Meg, you were there to call them, so it's such a great partnership.
Yeah. You know what? You guys are doing a great job. I appreciate it, and I thank you for having me on. Anything Maria asks me to do, I will do, because of what I think of her as a person.
She's the best.
Yeah, she is. And Maria, we'll continue to have a good time, whatever it is we're doing.
So yeah, we'll definitely have you on next time when we have a little more time to talk. But I really appreciate that you jumped on and gave us an interview. It's very important, and I think it's good for women's sports. And you guys are advocating for that and supporting it, and it's going to make a difference. So, thank
you very much. Thanks for having me on. Good luck to you both.
For Mrs. Meg Como, the voice of the Huskies, and my co-host and cohort, the lovely Maria Conlin. I am the best podcast host in the universe, Steve Cully. Remember, when life gives you lemons, don't make lemonade. Take 2 oranges and throw them back at life. All right, guys, we're off.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much. Thank you so